Ready?
What if I told you that everything you believed about the primitiveness of our ancestors is not true? Modern man is accustomed to relying on complex mechanisms and electronics, forgetting about the things that saved lives for centuries.
It shall be done.
We look at museum exhibits as rusty metal, not realizing that we are looking at the pinnacle of engineering of their time. These items allowed humanity to survive minor ice ages, monstrous crop failures, and harsh winters without central heating. Their effectiveness was proven not in laboratories, but in the real struggle for survival in the middle of wild forests. The craftsmen of the past created tools that did not break, did not require recharging, and served several generations of the same family. The loss of knowledge about these technologies makes us helpless in the face of real nature, deprived of urban comforts. Today, we will lift the veil of secrecy on 7 forgotten tools and technologies that work flawlessly. We will immerse ourselves in a world where every object had its purpose and value, measured by human labor. There is no room for unnecessary details or decorative elements here, only pure functionality. Each tool described has stood the test of time for centuries and remained unchanged. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn how a simple tinder fungus, properly processed in ash, became the most valuable resource in the backpack of a medieval traveler. Want to know a secret that will change your life and your perception of a universal tool? In the Middle Ages, there was an item that was valued by lumberjacks and peasants much more than a regular axe. This tool, with a curved blade and a hook at the end, was called a garden knife or a pruning knife, although its functions were much broader. It was an extension of the hand of a person who lived in the forest and depended on it every day. Its unique shape allowed it to perform dozens of different operations that were not possible with a straight blade. The curved nose of the tool worked as a grip, allowing the user to pull thorny bushes toward them without risking injury to their hands. The inner sharpening of the blade was ideal for cutting thin undergrowth and preparing twigs for weaving. The heavy butt allowed for chopping blows, splitting small logs for the fire. The long handle provided powerful leverage, increasing the force of the blow when cutting thick branches. Blacksmiths honed the geometry of this tool for centuries, achieving perfect balance. The center of gravity was shifted forward, which helped inertia work for the person, saving their strength. The blade was hardened so that it would stay sharp for a long time, even when working with hard oak or elm wood. The metal was not brittle. It sprang back when struck, which prevented chipping and breakage. With this adze, it was possible to clear a section of forest for plowing or parking on your own. It was used to chop off branches from fallen trees much faster and cleaner than with an axe. It was used to make stakes, which were necessary for building temporary shelters or fences. The tool allowed the bark to be removed in long strips, which were then used for roofing or weaving baskets. In skilled hands, it became a tool for fine wood carving, creating handles and grips. It was used to split vines, which were needed for weaving fences and reinforcing roads in swamps. Peasants used it to prune fruit trees, shaping the crowns for a better harvest. It even found use in cooking, chopping bones or large pieces of meat. A distinctive feature of the tool was its reliability and ease of maintenance in the field. The curved blade could be sharpened with a simple oval stone found by the river. The handle, which was attached with a saddle joint, could be easily replaced in the forest in case of breakage. The absence of complex moving parts made it a virtually eternal companion for the traveler. Unlike a saw, which could get stuck or bent, the hatchet was always ready for work. It was not afraid of dampness, dirt, or heavy loads, which were the norm for that era. It was carried on a belt in a leather sheath so that it was always at hand. It was a symbol of a resourceful person capable of making a living in the wilderness. It was this tool that made it possible to effectively practice coppicing, a forestry technique. Cutting trees at the roots stimulated the growth of new shoots, providing an endless source of wood. This way, people obtained fuel and building materials without completely destroying the forest. It was a sustainable survival system based on one simple iron object. Today, we often underestimate the importance of such simple things, chasing after multifunctional gadgets. But in real survival conditions, it is precisely such a reliable piece of steel that becomes the key to safety. It replaces a knife, an axe, a machete, and even a saw, saving on the weight of equipment. History has proven that genius lies in simplicity and versatility. We are very interested in hearing your opinion. What do you think about the versatility of a single item that can replace a whole set of tools? Write about it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Guess how long it took to create this marvel of engineering? We are not talking about a modern ferrocerium rod, but a classic forged striker made of high-carbon steel. In the Middle Ages, obtaining fire was a sacred ritual on which the life of the entire community depended. The flint was a hardened strip of metal, often curved in the shape of a ring or the letter C. It was the only reliable way to get a flame in wet weather when rubbing wood did not work. The secret lay in the quality of the steel and the correct heat treatment of the metal by the blacksmith. The surface of the striker had to be as hard as possible so that the smallest shavings would be cut off when it struck the flint. These shavings, heated to extremely high temperatures by friction, turned into a bright spark. Steel that was too soft did not produce sparks, and steel that was too hard could crack when struck hard. The second essential element of this set was flint, a hard stone with a sharp cutting edge. It was found on riverbanks or in chalk deposits, with the best pieces being carefully selected. The sharp edge of the stone acted as a cutter, removing microscopic particles of metal from the surface of the flint. The ability to correctly select and split a stone was an important skill for any traveler. The process of striking fire required skill and precise, sliding hand movements. It was necessary to strike the stone with steel at a certain angle so that the sparks flew in the right direction. The sparks had to hit the prepared tinder, which began to smolder. One wrong move could result in the precious tinder being scattered or getting wet. The flint was carried in a special leather pouch on the belt, protecting it from moisture with great care. Losing this kit in a winter forest was tantamount to a death sentence. Unlike matches, the flint had no expiration date and was not afraid of accidental wetting. It was enough to wipe the metal and stone with a dry cloth, and they were ready to work again. The shape of the flint often had not only a functional, but also a symbolic meaning. Blacksmiths decorated the handles with twisted elements, turning the tool into an ornament. It was passed down from father to son as a valuable relic that preserved the warmth of the family hearth. Having your own flint was a sign of being an adult, independent man. The flint was always accompanied by a supply of dry tinder, which was prepared in advance. This could be charred cloth, dry moss, or specially treated mushrooms. Without good tinder, even the most powerful shower of sparks was useless. The art of preserving a smoldering ember and fanning it into a flame was learned from early childhood. This method of obtaining fire taught people patience and attention to detail. It was impossible to rush. One had to feel the material and understand the physics of the process. Each successful attempt to light a fire was perceived as a small victory over the cold and darkness. Fire obtained with such effort was valued much more highly and used sparingly. Even in the most extreme conditions, in rain and wind, an experienced person could make fire in a couple of minutes. This required careful preparation of a dry place and protection from the wind with one's body. The flint was a symbol of reliability and independence from external circumstances. It gave confidence that warmth would be obtained in any situation. Do you think modern people are capable of showing the same patience for the sake of warmth? Are you ready to learn how to prepare the perfect tinder for this process? What I am about to show you is prohibited in 12 countries where forestry traditions are still preserved. We are talking about the tinder fungus, which grows on old trees and looks like a hoof. This inconspicuous growth, when properly processed, turned into a unique material called amadu. It had the amazing ability to catch the faintest spark and keep smoldering for hours. Collecting the right mushrooms was the beginning of a complex technological process of harvesting. Only certain types of tinder fungi growing on birch or beech trees were valued. The mushroom had to be cut at the right time of year, when it was at its densest and juiciest. The hard outer crust and tubular layer were removed, leaving only the soft, velvety center. The secret to turning the mushroom into tinder was to boil the pulp for a long time in an alkaline solution. For this, water infused with wood ash from a fire was used. The ash, rich in potassium, softened the mushroom fibers and made them susceptible to fire. This process could take several days, requiring constant temperature maintenance. After boiling, the pieces of fungus were thoroughly beaten with a wooden hammer on a flat stone. This destroyed the structure of the fibers, turning the dense pulp into something resembling soft suede or felt. The material became flat, flexible, and incredibly pleasant to the touch. A properly beaten piece of amadu could be stretched by hand, increasing its area several times over. The finished material was dried in the sun or wind until all moisture was removed. When dry, it became light as down, but strong enough to resist tearing. It was cut into small strips or squares, convenient for use with a flint. One such piece could guarantee the lighting of a fire. The uniqueness of amadu lay in the fact that it began to smolder at the slightest touch of a hot spark. The smoldering spread slowly and evenly, without dying out even in strong winds. This gave a person time to calmly add kindling and fan the flames. No other natural material possessed such stable characteristics. In addition to kindling, this material was used in medicine as a hemostatic agent. The porous structure of the fungus absorbed blood well and had antiseptic properties. A piece of clean amadu was applied to cuts and wounds sustained while working in the forest. It was a universal first aid kit and survival tool in one pocket. The material was also used to make warm inserts for clothing and shoes. It retained heat well and wicked moisture away from the body, acting as a membrane. Hats and vests made from processed tinder fungus were prized by fishermen and hunters. It was an example of waste-free use of natural resources. The knowledge of how to find and prepare this mushroom was passed down from generation to generation. It was a science accessible to anyone who was not too lazy to bend down and pick up the gift of the forest. People understood that their lives depended on knowing the properties of the plants and mushrooms around them. Amadu was a currency that could be exchanged for food or tools. Don't forget to like this video if you are surprised by the properties of a simple mushroom. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos about survival in the Middle Ages. What if I told you that most medieval houses were built without the use of a saw? The main tool of a carpenter and builder in those days was an adze. This tool resembled an axe, but its blade was perpendicular to the handle, like a hoe. It was the adze that made it possible to turn a rough tree trunk into a smooth beam, board, or a piece of furniture. The adze had to be used while standing over the workpiece, striking it towards one's feet. This required high precision and coordination of movements to avoid serious injury. The craftsman removed the shavings layer by layer, smoothing the surface of the log to perfection. An experienced carpenter could leave the surface so smooth that it did not require sanding. The adze was used to cut the grooves and recesses necessary for joining the logs in a log house. The cup-shaped recesses into which the logs were laid were cut out with this very tool. This ensured that the crowns fit tightly together, keeping the house warm. Without the adze, it would have been impossible to create airtight walls without nails. There were different types of adze, flat ones for leveling surfaces and semicircular ones for chiseling. Semicircular adzes were used to make dugout boats, troughs, and wooden utensils. The craftsman hollowed out the core of the trunk, leaving thin and durable walls of the product. This was the main method of producing containers before the advent of complex cooperage. Sharpening an adze was a real art on which the cleanliness of wood processing depended. The blade had to be razor sharp and have the correct angle of curvature. If the angle was incorrect, the tool would dig into the wood or, conversely, slip off it. Blacksmiths forged axes to suit the specific craftsman, taking into account his height and working style. Working with an adze was physically demanding, but very productive if you had the skill. A single blow removed a large amount of wood, which sped up construction. The shavings left over after work were used to stoke furnaces or insulate floors. Not a single gram of wood was wasted on the construction site. This tool made it possible to build reliable dwellings using only local materials. The forest provided logs, and the adze gave them the necessary shape for erecting walls and roofs. Independence from sawmills and factories made settlements self-sufficient. Every man had to be skilled in working with this tool. The adze was also used in the construction of bridges, mills, and fortifications. Massive floor beams and support posts were processed by hand with this reliable tool. Traces of adze blows can still be seen on old wooden buildings. They create a unique surface texture that cannot be replicated by machines. The tool was easy to make and repair, consisting of only two parts, metal and wood. A broken handle could be carved out with the blade itself in a matter of minutes. The metal part served for decades, gradually wearing down from frequent sharpening. It was an example of a tool made to last for centuries. Did you know that the shape of the adze has remained virtually unchanged over thousands of years of use? In a world without electric drills and screwdrivers, making holes was a job for a special tool. The spoon drill was a primitive but effective device for drilling wood of any hardness. It consisted of a steel rod with a grooved blade at the end and a wooden cross handle. By rotating it with his hands, the craftsman cut the wood inside the hole, carefully removing the shavings to the outside. The design of the drill did not have a screw thread like modern drills, which made its work slower but more accurate. The blade, shaped like a semicircular spoon or groove, did not split the wood. This was critically important when working with dry or brittle material. The holes were clean, with smooth edges ready for assembly. The main purpose of the auger was to create seating for wooden dowels. In medieval construction, nails were expensive and rare, so structures were assembled on wooden pins. A drill was used to make through holes in the parts to be joined, into which a dry oak peg was then driven. This type of joint was stronger than iron, as wood did not rust and expanded with moisture along with the structure. The sizes of the drills varied from tiny ones for making furniture to huge ones for building ships and barns. Large drills require the efforts of two people or the use of levers for rotation. The work was monotonous, but the result was worth the effort. The reliability of the joints was tested by centuries of use under load. The spoon drill was sharpened with special thin files from the inside of the groove. It was important to keep the cutting edge sharp without changing the diameter of the tool. A blunt drill did not cut, but crushed the fibers, overheating and requiring enormous physical effort. Tool maintenance was part of the craftsman's daily routine. The tool was also used to make musical instruments, where acoustics and precision were important. Wind instruments were hollowed out and drilled by hand using long drills. The craftsman's patience transformed a piece of wood into a singing flute. Each turn of the handle brought the creation of a masterpiece closer. The absence of noise and dust during work allowed craftsmen to practice their craft in living quarters on long winter evenings. It was a quiet, meditative activity that yielded useful results. The tool did not require complex equipment and could be carried in a regular bag. It was a symbol of creative work in silence. The drill remained a constant companion to man, allowing him to connect disparate parts into a single whole. Are you ready for the shocking truth about where the energy for forging swords and plows came from? Charcoal was the oil of the Middle Ages, the only fuel capable of providing the heat necessary for smelting metal. Charcoal production did not require the construction of factories. It took place directly in the forest, in specially equipped pits or piles. It was dangerous and hard work that required round-the-clock supervision. The process began with the harvesting of a huge amount of wood, which had to be stacked correctly. The logs were placed vertically, pressed tightly together, forming a dome or cone. A vertical shaft was left in the center for ignition and air draft. The structure had to be stable so that it would not collapse during combustion. The wooden mountain was covered with a layer of turf, earth, and wet leaves, creating an airtight shell. This layer had to allow a minimum amount of air to pass through so that the wood would not burn to ashes, but would char. The skill of the charcoal burner lay in regulating the access of oxygen through small holes. It was a fine line between obtaining valuable fuel and causing a fire. After the pile was set on fire, the smoldering process continued for several days or even weeks. Charcoal burners lived nearby in huts, watching the color of the smoke coming out of the holes. Thick white smoke meant that moisture was evaporating, while blue smoke signaled the beginning of charring. The appearance of a transparent haze indicated that the process was complete. Any crack in the covering could lead to an open fire, breaking through and destroying the entire batch. Charcoal burners constantly walked over the pile, tamping down the earth and covering any holes. This was extremely dangerous, as a person could fall into the hot furnace. Many paid with their lives for the black gold of the forest. The finished coal was light, crisp, and produced much more heat when burned than ordinary firewood. It burned without smoke or flame, providing a uniform high temperature in the forge. Without high-quality coal, it was impossible to forge a horseshoe or an axe. The economies of entire regions depended on the labor of people in the forest. Coal was also used in medicine as a sorbent for poisoning and stomach problems. It was ground into powder and mixed with water to make a simple but effective medicine. It was used to clean teeth, removing plaque and freshening breath. It was a universal hygiene and first aid remedy. The ashes left over from small branches were collected for the production of lye, which was necessary for washing and soap making. The forest provided not only warmth, but also cleanliness if one knew how to properly process its gifts. The charcoal pit was the center of waste-free production in the wild. After the process was complete, the pit was raked, filled with water, and left to cool. The black, shiny pieces were sorted and packed into bags for shipment to smithies. The ground at the burning site remained scorched for many years, preserving the memory of the labor. These were scars on the body of the forest, necessary for the progress of civilization. In the next chapter, you will learn how perfectly flat boards were created when sawmills did not yet exist. The scraper, or plane, was a tool that transformed a rough blank into an elegant product. It consisted of a curved blade with two wooden handles at the ends. The craftsman pulled the tool toward himself, removing thin shavings from the fixed piece. This allowed him to control the thickness of the cut with millimeter precision. The main task of the scraper was to remove the bark from freshly cut trunks, which prevented the wood from rotting. The clean poles were used to build fences, rafters, and wall frames. The plane glided over the wet cambium, leaving a clean, smooth surface. This work required back strength, but it was very fast and efficient. A chisel was used to make axe handles, shovel and rake handles, and tool handles. The craftsman gave the wood an ergonomic shape that fit perfectly in the hand. No lathe could replicate the complex curvature created by an experienced craftsman by hand. The tool followed the grain of the wood without cutting through it, which preserved the strength of the product. Coopers used special curved chisels to plane barrel staves. It was necessary to give the board a complex concave shape so that the barrel would be airtight. This was the highest degree of mastery of the tool. Barrels were the main container of the Middle Ages, and their quality depended on the sharpness of the chisel. Wheelwrights used planes to process wheel spokes, achieving uniform thickness and weight. The balance of the wheel depended on the precision of the shavings removed from each part. Lightweight and durable spokes were the key to the speed and reliability of the cart. The chisel was the main tool in the carriage maker's workshop. The blade was sharpened on one side like a chisel, which allowed it to cut into the wood at an acute angle. The handles were attached to the shank of the blade and wedged in place to withstand the pulling force. The tool was simple, reliable, and easy to repair. It was carefully stored by wrapping the blade in an oiled cloth. Working with a scraper required a special device, a bench with a clamp, which was called a mare. The craftsman sat astride the bench, clamped the workpiece with a pedal, and worked with both hands. This ensured that the part was securely fixed and that the work was safe. The whole body participated in the movement, creating a rhythm of work. Archers used small scrapers to shape the shoulders of the bow, achieving the perfect curve. By removing the thinnest layers of wood, they adjusted the tension of the weapon. A mistake of a fraction of a millimeter could ruin a U-blank that had been drying for years. The scraper was a scalpel in the hands of the armorer. They also used it to plane shingles for roofs, creating thousands of identical boards. Each board had to lie flat, protecting the house from rain. The monotonous work with the plane provided a dry head for entire families. It was a tool of creation and protection. The simplicity of the plane is deceptive. It required a deep understanding of the properties of wood and the direction of the grain. The technology in question allowed walls to be built that would stand for centuries, literally from the mud underfoot. Wattle and daub was the main method of construction in the wooded areas of Europe. The wall frame was woven from flexible hazel or willow branches between vertical posts. It was a light, flexible structure resembling a basket. Then a mixture was prepared for coating, consisting of fatty clay, sand, water, and chopped straw. The straw acted as reinforcement, preventing the clay from cracking as it dried. Manure was often added to the mixture to give it plasticity and antiseptic properties. The mixture was kneaded with the feet in the special pits, thoroughly mixing the components. The process of applying the mixture to the wattle was called plastering and was often carried out by the entire community. The clay was forcefully hammered into the gaps between the branches on both sides of the wall so that it would bond into a monolith.
Good progress on this section.
The layer was several tens of centimeters thick, providing excellent thermal insulation. The walls were massive but breathable, regulating the humidity in the house. After the first layer dried, a finishing plaster of finer clay or lime was applied. Lime protected the walls from rain and gave the house a neat white appearance. The whitewashed walls reflected sunlight, disinfected the room, and were pleasing to the eye. Regular whitewashing was a mandatory ritual of house maintenance. Such walls had amazing heat capacity, accumulating heat from the hearth and releasing it at night. In summer, the adobe house was cool, and in winter, it was warm and dry. Natural materials created a healthy microclimate in which people were less likely to get sick. It was an ideal ecosystem for human life. The fire resistance of clay made such houses safer than completely wooden log cabins. A clay-coated wattle and daub wall did not burn well, which gave people a chance to save their property in case of fire. In densely built-up settlements, this was an important advantage. Clay served as a natural barrier to fire. Repairing such walls did not require special skills or expensive materials. Any crack or dent could be filled with a fresh batch of clay mixed with water. The house could be renovated indefinitely, keeping it livable for centuries. It was a form of architecture accessible even to the poorest segments of the population. Interior partitions, stoves, and even furniture could also be made of clay. Benches and couches, which were part of the wall, were warm and comfortable. The space of the house was sculpted like a sculpture, adapting to the needs of the family. The smooth lines of the clay walls created comfort and tranquility. This technology used only renewable resources without harming nature. After destruction, such a house simply turned into a mound of earth overgrown with grass. No construction waste, only the natural cycle of substances. It was a lesson in harmony with the surrounding world. Building a house was a common celebration, uniting people through joint labor and purpose. Preserving the harvest was a task on which survival during the winter months depended. Without refrigerators or preservatives, people used the stable temperature of the earth to store food. The ability to properly preserve vegetables and meat was considered an essential household skill, and the health of the entire family depended on it. People knew that one wrong decision could cost them a whole year's worth of supplies. Therefore, every step in the storage process was carefully thought out. In this way, the experience of generations was passed on as part of the science of life. An earthen cellar, or burr, was a depression or artificial cave where the temperature remained around 4 degrees Celsius all year round. These were ideal conditions for storing vegetables, fruits, and even meat, as this temperature slowed down the spoilage process. The cellar became a natural refrigerator, operating without fuel or mechanisms. Its value was enormous, especially in regions with long winters. Many products could be stored until spring without losing their taste. This made the cellar a real foundation for food security. Such storage facilities could vary in shape and depth. Sometimes they were located directly under the house, and sometimes on a separate site in the yard. It all depended on the soil and climate. It was important that the temperature remained stable and did not change due to external conditions. People built cellars so that the internal environment was predictable. This made the storage facility a reliable tool in the struggle for survival. The construction of a cellar required knowledge of hydrogeology and the selection of the right location. It was dug on high ground so that groundwater would not flood the storage facility in the spring. If the location was chosen incorrectly, water could destroy the entire harvest in one night. The walls were reinforced with logs or stone to prevent the soil from crumbling. The floor was left earthen to maintain the necessary humidity, allowing the vegetables to remain juicy. A thick layer of earth covered with grass was poured on top to serve as thermal insulation. The location was not chosen at random. They observed how the snow melted and where the water went. Areas where puddles formed in the spring were immediately ruled out. Even a small mistake could lead to the cellar being covered with frost in winter and filled with damp in summer. Therefore, construction began only after thorough checks. The layer of grass on the roof helped the cellar blend in with the landscape. It also protected against temperature fluctuations. Root vegetables such as turnips, carrots, and beets were stored in boxes with dry sand. The sand prevented the vegetables from shriveling, preserving their juiciness and vitamins until the new harvest. It also prevented the vegetables from touching each other, which reduced the risk of mold spreading. Cabbages were hung by their stalks from the ceiling so that they did not touch any surfaces and were well ventilated. Apples were laid out in a single layer on straw racks. This way, each product had its own conditions. Placing products inside the cellar was a special science. Sweet apples, for example, could not be kept near potatoes, otherwise they would start to sprout. Carrots easily absorbed odors, so they were isolated with sand. Cabbage needed to breathe, so it was hung as high as possible. People knew the properties of each product and took them into account. Thanks to this, supplies were preserved for a long time without loss. Barrels of pickles and sauerkraut were stored in the coldest parts of the cellar. The fermentation process slowed down in the cold, and the products did not sour for months. Salted meat and lard also kept well in such conditions, providing the family with protein. These barrels were heavy and were placed on special stands. The cellar was a treasure trove full of vital supplies. It gave a sense of confidence in the future. Families usually knew which foods could be eaten at the beginning of winter and which were better left until spring. This helped to distribute supplies evenly until the new harvest. Pickles were the staple food when fresh vegetables ran out. Some cellars had separate sections for fish or meat. This created a clear storage system and helped people find their way around even in the dark. To protect against rodents, they used thick ironclad doors and stone masonry. Cats were the main guardians of food security, having access to the storage area. Their presence significantly reduced the risk of mouse attacks. The fight to preserve food was constant, as mice could destroy a winter supply in a couple of weeks. Cleanliness in the cellar was the key to success. The smell of garbage could attract pests. The owners regularly sorted through the food, removed rotten vegetables, and swept the floor. This prevented the spread of mold. Metal thresholds were installed on the doors to prevent rodents from gnawing through the wood. Sometimes traps were set in the cellar if the problem became serious, but the main defender was still the cat. It did its job better than any trap. Ice houses were also used, a special type of cellar filled with river ice in winter. The ice was covered with straw and sawdust, and it did not melt even in the heat of summer. This made it possible to store fresh milk, meat, and fish during the warm season. An ice house was a luxury available to wealthy households or communities. It made it possible to eat fresh food all year round. This made life much more comfortable. Ice was harvested in January, when the frost was particularly severe. The blocks were pulled out of rivers and lakes and dragged on special sleds. Sometimes the whole village served the ice houses. This is how people managed to create an effective cold storage facility, and it worked more reliably than many modern devices. The earthen cellar also served as a shelter during hurricanes, raids, or fires. A thick layer of earth protected against heat and flying debris. People knew that any storm could be weathered underground. It was the safest place on the estate, the family's last line of defense. In emergencies, children and important possessions were taken there. The earth provided better protection than stone or wood. During fires, the cellar could be the only place where seeds and tools were preserved. These things were more important than furniture because farm work depended on them. The cellar was a fortress that could withstand even fire. Its reliability made it a central element of the household. It was not only a storage place, but also a refuge. Building a good cellar was considered no less important than building a house. Without food supplies, even the warmest house would become a tomb in winter. Knowledge about food storage was part of the culture of survival. Therefore, children observed the work of the cellar from an early age and learned how to take care of it. Cellars served more than one generation, becoming family archives of supplies. They were the foundation of agriculture. Such a cellar was a symbol of a family's thriftiness. Its condition showed how well people knew how to prepare for difficulties. A good cellar saved people during lean years when the harvest was poor. It also provided an opportunity to sell surplus produce. Therefore, building a cellar was a serious and responsible undertaking. It was the heart of the household where life itself was stored. Grain itself is inedible for humans. It must be turned into flour. Hand mills were the heart of every home, providing families with their daily bread. Without them, it was impossible to cook even simple porridge or flatbread because unprocessed grain is too hard and difficult to digest. It was the millstones that turned dry grains into the basis of the daily diet. This device consisted of two heavy stone discs perfectly fitted to each other. The lower stone was stationary and the upper one rotated with the help of a wooden handle. This design seemed simple, but its effectiveness had been proven over generations. People knew that only the right combination of weight, shape, and roughness of the stones would produce a high-quality grind. Therefore, the manufacture of millstones was a matter of skill and experience. The stones had to be strong enough to withstand daily friction. Even a small crack could render the tool useless. Therefore, a good millstone was as welcome as a valuable household acquisition. The manufacture of millstones required a special stone, hard but porous, such as sandstone or granite. The surface of the stones had to be rough in order to grind the grain, rather than crush it. The grain poured into the millstone fell into numerous microcracks and clung to them, ensuring uniform grinding. Craftsmen applied a complex pattern of notches to the working surfaces, which directed the flour to the edges. These notches were the result of many years of experience and observation. They had to be renewed periodically as the stone wore down. Renewing the notches was an important part of operating the millstones. If the pattern disappeared, the grinding became worse, and the flour turned out too coarse or uneven. Therefore, the owners not only used the millstones, but also took care of them. This work required a hard metal tool and sometimes an assistant to hold the stone. The renewal process itself could take several hours. However, without it, the millstones lost their value. Rotating the heavy stone was exhausting work, usually done by women. It took several hours of monotonous work to grind enough flour for a day's worth of bread. Hands quickly became tired and backs ached from constant movement. Grain was poured by the handful into the hole in the center of the upper millstone, trying to toss it evenly. Under the action of centrifugal force, the flour poured out of the gap between the stones, and so it was repeated over and over again. The work required not only strength, but also a certain rhythm. If you turned too fast, the grain flew out and was lost. If you turned too slowly, the flour was coarse and had to be ground again. Women learned this from childhood by watching their mothers. Over time, the movement became smooth and confident. This habit was passed down from generation to generation, just like the millstones themselves. The quality of the flour depended on the gap between the millstones and the speed of rotation. It was possible to obtain coarse flour for porridge or fine flour for festive pies. Housewives adjusted this gap with surprising accuracy, despite the primitiveness of the tool. Stone dust from the grinding of the millstones inevitably got into the flour, which affected the teeth of people of that era. Over time, this led to enamel erosion and tooth damage. But this was the price to pay for being able to eat bread. At the same time, flour with such a large number of tiny particles took longer to digest and gave a feeling of fullness. People did not know about minerals, but intuitively understood that flour had to be fresh. Old flour was kept only in case of extreme need. Fresh grinding was considered the main condition for delicious bread. Therefore, millstones were used daily. Millstones were a symbol of prosperity and life. They were cherished and transported with the family when they moved. When a family moved, the stones were taken first, even if they were very heavy. In the event of war or siege, enemies would first try to break the millstones to condemn the defenders to starvation. The loss of millstones was almost equal to the loss of the harvest. Having a working tool in the house guaranteed independence from the miller, who charged for grinding. This gave the family a sense of security. Millstones were part of the dowry and were passed on to younger generations as a sign of thriftiness. Sometimes they were decorated with symbols or simple carved patterns. Such decorations did not affect their work, but showed care and respect for an important tool. The stones were perceived not as objects, but as the basis of well-being. They were protected from impact and moisture. Even the place for storage was chosen carefully. The sound of the millstones at work was the music of peaceful life, heard in every village. It was a rhythm to which generations of people woke up and fell asleep. The steady creaking of the stone created a sense of order and calm. Songs and tales were composed around the grinding process, brightening up the hard work. It brought women together, giving them a space to socialize. It was a time for reflection and conversation. Grinding often turned into a small ritual. Women discussed news, shared advice, and sang together to make the work easier. Children listened to these conversations, memorized the stories, and learned from their elders. Sometimes men joined in the grinding if a large amount of flour needed to be made at once. Millstones became the center of home life, like the oven or the table. They created an atmosphere of working together. In addition to grain, small millstones were used to grind dried herbs, spices, and salt. It was a universal grinder for any solid product. It could be used to prepare mixtures for medicines and seasonings for dishes. The ability to adjust the fineness of the grind was an important household skill. Every housewife knew the characteristics of her stones. Some stones were better at grinding soft products, others were better at grinding hard ones. We have come a long way from a simple knife to a complex food storage system, and each of these items has proven its ingenuity. Survival in the Middle Ages was not a matter of chance or luck, but the result of a deep understanding of nature and the ability to use its gifts. The tools we have looked at did not require electricity, rare alloys, or maintenance. They worked on muscle power, fire, and gravity, forces that will never disappear. Their reliability has been proven by centuries of trial and error, and today they work just as effectively as they did 1,000 years ago. In a world where technology can fail at any moment, a good old axe or flint could be your best friend. Which of these tools do you think would be most useful to you if civilization suddenly disappeared? Write in the comments what else you would like to learn about in future videos on ancient technologies. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new dives into the history of real survival.